Hey guys, welcome to Pancreas Pals. Emily here.
And Christy.
It's been a minute, Christy. I miss your beautiful shining face. I just want to disclose, guys, we'll do a whole other episode on this. Your girl, Emily, after 3 years, just about finally got hit with the vid. I don't know what the youth say anymore, but yeah, I currently have COVID. Just finished a round of Paxlovid. All of this rhymes. Feeling a lot better, but really wanted to do this episode with Christy. So if I start to not make sense, we're gonna blame it on that. Um, Even though before I don't make sense and I didn't have COVID, so this is real. This is me.
We're
But
just glad you're feeling better.
thanks. Yeah, it was touch and go there for a minute, but this week's episode is about Christie's journey, and the bebe she currently has in her oven. How many weeks are you, Christy, at the time of recording this?
I am 30 and a half weeks.
Damn. Yeah, anyone who follows Christy on Instagram, you can see the cute little pup and bump updates. We love her dog, and I can't wait for him to be a brother. Um,
Yeah, that poor creature has no idea what's coming. But yeah, the the bump has graduated from like little to just like ever present. My belly has been so itchy with the stretching.
Have you tried bio oil? Again, I am not pregnant, nor have I ever been pregnant, but I work in for a health magazine, so I know some
I
random things.
I haven't, and you know what? I probably should be taking some of these recommendations more seriously because, like, I'm sure we'll talk about this through the episode. Trimester 2 was such sweet bliss. I didn't have a single negative symptom. I like other than the like budding bump, I there were absolutely just times where I did not physically feel pregnant.
I wish we could share our texts from the first 2 trimesters. Christy is literally like, "I'm loving pregnancy." I'm sure she's still loving pregnancy, but it was just hysterical. Like as soon as you,
To be clear, I absolutely still love it, but I would be such a liar if I said that things hadn't changed since
I think
entering the
more
third
with
trimester.
right. I should back this up and say with diabetes specifically, because head back to Miriam's episode, head back to multiple that we've done with Christy about this. Anyone who knows someone who or themselves has been pregnant with type 1 diabetes knows that it is quite the journey. Very, achievable, doable, but a lot of work. And yeah, I can't name the specific episodes, but there have been plenty this season, so go back and check them out.
And I think the last time we checked in was actually at week 13. And it's so funny because I remember saying I was recording from my Nana's house. Zach and I did a little staycation at
Oh
Nana's.
yeah.
I remember saying, like, oh, yeah, like, I think the insulin resistance is here. Such a clown I was. Like, I should have been getting fit for a custom red nose at the time because any resistance that I thought I saw in the first or second trimester were so easily cured. Like I'd be like, "Oh man, I can't believe it. Like I hit 150 today. What did I do?" I would go through all of this, add a single basal unit or like add a single unit to that same meal with short acting insulin the next day. Problem solved. The third trimester is not like that.
Miriam had
The third
touched
trimester is not like that.
Miriam had touched on this. It's like, insulin turns into water type of thing where it's like, what is it doing? Your carb ratios are insane. Like,
They're bananas, and I'm going through pens just like that much faster. But ironically, I actually just got on the Humalog Junior because I do value a half unit so much. And when you really are trying to fine tune, I mean, I wish that I had had it in the first trimester because my insulin needs in the first trimester were so low that I think it would have been very nice to have these half units. I know for next time, but regardless, yeah,
we should
third trimester is like a whole other
we should
whole other bear.
we should preface by saying Christy's on multiple daily injections, MDI. So when she's talking about pens, there are different ways that you can give yourself injections. Some are with syringes, some are with what we call pens using pen needles. You know, there's plenty of different ways out there. But Christy, I believe your current therapy, as doctors would call it, is pen needle or pens, insulin pens, and a Dexcom CGM, continuous glucose monitor.
Yes,
Correct?
the Dexcom has been a must have. I feel like we've definitely talked about my journey of resisting wearing something to getting the Dexcom, and like my baby's middle name might be Dexcom now.
I
Like
feel
that's
like
how
we
much
should
I
do.
love it.
I'm not a TikTok person, but like lull the talk, but I seriously feel like we should overlay season 1. I think we did an episode on like me getting new technology and you being like, never gonna do it, never gonna happen, whatever. We should do an overlay between
I'm
here and
such a
then.
fool. I'm such a fool.
No, you're
Maybe
different.
maybe maybe my, like, second pregnancy, I'll be on a pump, like, we'll see.
Ooh, oh my God, I never thought you'd ever say that. So I'm already shook.
I don't think so. To be honest, I still like using the pens. It still works for
No
me.
shame in the game. You do
Um,
you. It's
so
chronic
yeah,
illness.
I'm on the Humalog Junior, which I just like the way that the Junior is on the
Crayon.
pen. The Junior is on the pen,
Don't
but it
make
looks
me
like it's
cough. I
written
have
in
COVID.
crayon. And then I'm taking a split dose of Levemir for my basal, but something that has been an evolution over the course of the pregnancy. I always used to split my Levemir equally. Like, I
Right.
think pre-pregnancy,
And
I was taking, and I have to remember all of this because as
you're gonna
Miriam
go back.
has beat
Yeah.
it into my brain, and as per my request, mind you, on like my most desperate days, I'm like, Miriam, help me.
That's literally all
Um,
of us, to the point where Miriam wasn't answering our texts for a week and we were both like, is she good? And then it turns
well,
out her phone.
I had texted her with like a third trimester freak out, and she was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I just saw these." And I was like, "You know what? It was probably best that for once like I didn't have your immediate coddle because it did kind of force me to work through it, but I broke out my pregnancy with type 1 diabetes book, which I poured over through the first trimester.
Right.
In the second, honestly, I think I truly was blessed. Um I can't remember if we talked about this previously, but basically in pregnancy, in the first trimester, at some point, your body, because your immune system is down in pregnancy, your body is actually able to produce some of its own insulin because the beta cells that are usually attacking each other and themselves and don't produce the insulin,
With type
you
1
know, your immune
diabetes.
with
Yeah.
type 1, your body has a chance to produce some of that. So because I was diagnosed so late, Emily, you're going to do very well. Because I was diagnosed relatively late in life at age 17, my endocrine told me you probably have way more beta cells, just like full of insulin that finally are going to be able to produce a little. I think it literally carried me through the second trimester because I was so prepared, and like I had looked at the pregnancy with type 1 diabetes book, and Ginger is one of the authors. She's the one who kind of shares her week by week
Right. We've
and her
actually had her
journey
on the
through her.
podcast. So
Love her.
yeah, she's great.
But I kept expecting in the second trimester for more insulin resistance to creep up, and I sound so spoiled, but like it didn't. I don't think that I experienced true resistance that couldn't be solved by a quick, like, single unit or two of basal or a minor adjustment in short acting until, this is going to sound bananas, but I think it was like week. Oh, you know what? I can tell you exactly what it was. Week 27. It was the second that I entered the third trimester. I have fit certain stereotypes to a T. I felt better from the nausea the second I entered the second trimester, and then the second I entered the third trimester, I had to cut out carbs in the morning completely. Like, I have scrambled eggs, avocado, and either leftover roasted vegetables, or I top it with salsa for breakfast every morning. Because if I even look at a carb in the morning,
Your
my
blood
blood
sugar.
sugar goes
Yeah.
up.
I do want to explain a little bit for those listening who are maybe new to some of these insulin terms, basal versus bolus. So basal would be your background insulin. Think of it as if you're on multiple daily injections, your long-acting insulin would be like Levemir, Lantus, what have you. Those are just some brand names from, the pharma peeps. And bolus is kind of you give yourself throughout the day. So if you're eating, if as a correction, if you're high, what have you, if you have an insulin pump, those insulin types aren't going to differ because you're only using one type of insulin in your insulin pump and you're getting a continuous drip of that background, that same insulin, not a background insulin, a short acting insulin. Sorry to interrupt you, Christy. Go ahead.
No, that was irrelevant. I don't even.
Oh, okay. Well, now that
At this point, I'm just kind of ranting. I'm realizing I have so much to say, and I just think I'm gonna forget. Like, I'm scared to
I don't
forget
want you
my
to
precious
forget, but I
lessons.
want to talk about the situation that occurred.
Oh
Um,
my god, I'm ready to pop off.
yeah, let's pop off. So, just to set this up, um, Miriam, Christy, and I have a group chat. They're very kind to include me. They are usually talking about pregnancy, and I'm just over here being like, "Here for you. I'm here for you." I have
But we
nothing to add to this.
but we like you, and then when you get pregnant, you can just, like, look back through our
Oh, I
texts.
gotta yeah, it's gonna be years from now, so I gotta work on screenshotting those.
I was gonna say
But
just bank them, bank them for
um,
later.
so some background. Uh, Christy and Miriam are often discussing these trimester occurrences. Miriam now has, I don't even know how old Max is. I think he's a year or he's coming up on it. Miriam's listening to this probably and gonna kill me. Um,
He's
but
definitely a February baby.
yeah, that sounds right. So am I. Okay, anyways, so Christy, let's talk a little bit about what this class was that you were taking and this incident that I've been so mysterious about, mostly because I have really bad brain fog, but continue.
Well, something that Ginger mentions a lot in the book and something that I was prepared for, just going to various doctors, was just kind of like being forced into a diabetes stereotype and kind of being diabetes shamed through your pregnancy. Um, so
Because we're
bear
not
in
shamed
mind that
enough as it is,
was
gotta
just
add
to
that on.
add a little extra flair. Um, what a lot of it stems from is things that were typically issues with type 1 diabetes and pregnancy many, many, many years ago. With the technology that we have available today and the understanding that we have about how diabetes works and the ability to get your numbers into basically non-diabetic range before, during, and after your pregnancy for things like breastfeeding, it has essentially eradicated a lot of the concerns with having type 1 diabetes and being pregnant. Unfortunately, as far as technology has come and as far as like the diabetes community, like our understanding of how healthy and safe pregnancy with T1D can be, the rest of the world, unfortunately, including the rest of the medical world, has not necessarily caught up.
And there's bad seeds everywhere. I don't want anyone listening to this, especially who's a healthcare provider or any type of medical professional, to be like, "Oh my God, they're bashing everyone."
This is
No,
not at everyone.
this is not at everyone, but look us in the eye and tell us you've never come across someone who didn't know everything. Like it's par for the course. It's not okay, though, in my opinion, the story that's about to unfold, but it's not surprising. And yeah, Christy, just go for it. Oh, I should say the big thing that people kind of in the medical field from decades ago, even I'd say a decade or more, consider the big issue with a type 1 diabetes person being pregnant is that they have big babies. And that has to do with blood sugars being out of whack during the pregnancy and, some complications that can occur. But it's not like there are plenty of people from 40 years ago, and even I'd say that had healthy average sized babies, even though they were type 1 diabetic. This is not, and way before this technology was even existed. I know plenty of stories of people that had very healthy pregnancies and births. So, that being said, Christy, here's your soapbox and microphone, if you will.
Well, just it's also tricky because the fact of the matter is, and I do have to preface this because it makes me feel better. Um, According to the doctor, my baby is literally perfect. She is on the bigger side. She is on the larger side of normal. Does that have jack shit to do with my diabetes? No, because my A1C has been under 5 this entire time.
Which is
My
insane. A round of applause. Like, amazing.
I just
Hard work.
I have to because the shame I got yesterday. You know who else had 3 babies over 8 pounds? My very fit, very healthy, beautiful, below average size mother who has no diabetes.
No history. Like, there's so many things that go into play when you're growing a human inside of you that don't have to do with a chronic illness. Like, yeah, there's added stuff, but like,
Genetics has to do with everything, like everything with your health is somehow vaguely related to genetics. Does it mean that you are doomed to have, every ailment that's ever been in your family? No, but it's all relevant, especially in pregnancy. And I've been talking to like aunts of mine who have carried children and stuff like that. Like, again, my mom is a tiny, healthy, non diabetic woman. My brother was a 9+ pounder.
Damn.
So I'm just saying, like, she's, she meaning my baby, is on the larger side of
Of
normal.
normal.
I already like every time I hear that, like, oh, she's growing great, like she's on the bigger side, like we love it. Like none of my doctors are concerned who I'm actually working with. Um, so to our anecdote that we've built up into such a
After 15 minutes.
it's just me ranting,
No,
really.
it's me too.
Um, so aside from managing blood sugar super closely and being a type 1 diabetic woman through this pregnancy, I'm also just a pregnant woman. So, all of the things that we have to do to manage blood sugar, I would say hour to hour, day to day, whatever, but it's like second to second. Like you're always thinking about it, you're always tending to it, you're always making changes. It's, your normal routine, except it's affecting someone else, so your motivation is so much higher. And was feeling really good about myself that I've had such a healthy pregnancy so far, and again, I feel super blessed with that, but I know it's also the result of hard work. It's something that I take pride in. It's something I've put a lot into. So, long story short, you still have other things to do in addition to managing your blood sugar. One of those things, as recommended by my OBGYN, was to take a birthing class through our hospital. So essentially what this does, and it's all still virtual, just clearly COVID is still a thing as much as we all wish it wasn't. So any time that classes can be virtual, at least in my experience so far with this pregnancy, we've taken like breastfeeding classes virtually, we've taken baby care classes virtually, and now we're taking the birthing class virtually. It's a 2-part one, so we still have to see this evil lady again next week. Because we're past 30 weeks, so this is when it felt right to take it and just log on with all the other little virtual people do in the first quarter of the year. So first of all, our host, who is through the hospital that we're delivering at, um, super obnoxious and was having everyone answer every single question. Like she couldn't just say, all right, so we're all going to have our videos on the whole time, okay? She would wait and then say, this person, okay? Like Jessica, okay? Sally, okay? Christie, okay? We all had to say okay. It was such a waste of
So we've
time.
got now a word from one of our sponsors. Hey Christy, have you heard of US Med Supply?
I think I've seen a commercial for it. It's a medical supply company, right?
Yeah, but apparently they're the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide, the #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod Dash, and the #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide. Plus, they're rated as the #1 distributor in Dexcom customer satisfaction surveys.
Ooh, sounds like something I need to check out. Do they partner with most insurance companies?
Yep, and they'll even help us get set up and work with our insurance companies so we don't have to spend hours on the phone.
The actual dream.
Right? We and all of our pals can head to usmed.com/pals or call 888-721-1516 to sign up now.
Already on their website.
And now back to the episode. So we've got a specific type of person running this class. She's affiliated with the hospital. Christie's OBGYN from the same hospital has recommended that she take this class. This is the stage.
And the class is focused on, it does not touch at all on cesarean delivery, aka a C-section. This class is about going into labor. It's a labor and delivery class. It's about vaginal delivery and what couples should expect as far as, early labor goes, the different stages of early labor, when to go to the hospital. And of course, I don't need, like, this is not a Christie custom class. I am very aware that the likelihood of us inducing labor is high simply because you have a little bit more control. Like, if we know what day we're inducing, we can plan a really like low carb breakfast, like have a full tummy going into the hospital, stuff like that. It's just that little bit easier to manage your diabetes the day of if you know that that's the day that you're going in. So I know that an induction is very much on the table. Again, I'm at 30 weeks now, which sounds like I'm right on the cusp, but we're still doing a lot of monitoring because at this point, hence why I was in the class, things like vaginal delivery and going into a natural, non induced labor are still very much on the table for me. We just are monitoring to see, what position she settles in, just like any other patient, diabetic or not. Any other pregnant woman at, 30 weeks, and then as you get closer and closer, is going to be monitored that much closer to determine essentially like what the best evacuation plan is. Could end up being C-section, could end up being induction for vaginal delivery, could end up being going into natural labor for vaginal delivery. We're up for all of it, whatever the safest exit is. But again, this was a class I wanted to take. It is a goal of mine to at least try for vaginal delivery. We'll see how that goes. This was information that I wanted, and this was information that my husband wanted. So I made the mistake as she's going around, asking everyone, like, what's your profession, blah, 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 which was fine. She was trying to do introductions. It did get a little long, and she was not using people's right names, and she was just being obnoxious, really, our host. She thought that Zach wasn't paying attention because we had said initially when we logged on, Zach and I were sitting on opposite ends of the sofa. So when Zach introduced himself, he said, like, we have the Zoom projected on the TV. So if I'm facing forward, like, I'm still here. She completely ignored that and, like, twice throughout was like, just so folks know, like, I would really prefer if you were not watching TV at this time. And we were like, I literally had to take myself off. Like, I unmuted myself and I was like, just to be clear, my husband is not watching like a football game. I literally turned the computer on. I was like, we have Zoom up on the TV because I thought it was going to be more videos, which
Yeah,
which eventually we got there. But we thought it was going to be more videos, and I would rather, be able to look at the larger TV screen
when
than have
seeing
us huddled,
someone's projected vagina, yes,
which
as
which which we did.
oh, no.
That was my favorite part. My mom called right as like it went from cartoon, like animated, here's what the baby looks like in the birth canal, to actual baby exiting. I was like, oh
Oh,
God, I'll call
no.
you back, mom. Um, Anyway, so at one point, and of course, like I said, she's making everyone individually answer. So she asked a question that I was like, shoot, this is gonna like out me. Like this was just not someone based on her tone, just like the way that she was leading the class, accusing Zach of not paying attention. Which like we paid for this class and I'm pregnant. Like, of course he's paying attention. But whatever. Um, she asked, did everyone pass their glucose test? Which, like, what if someone didn't and they didn't want to disclose that? It was kind of a weird question, but whatever. She wanted everyone to answer individually. So she got to me and I was like, Zach was kind of looking at me like, babe, you can lie. But I was like, I didn't end up taking it because, like, I'm a type 1 diabetic. So if I were to drink a sugary drink, like, I would have failed. So,
Well, there's
we
no
didn't do
reason
that.
yeah, you already know that you're
And
diabetic, so
this which some doctors might make you do it, but just make sure you're telling your nurse staff and that when you're at your OB visits, because they originally had me scheduled for one and I was like, I'll do it, but like I'm gonna fail and then leave your office with a high blood sugar. I don't think anyone wants that.
yeah, that's kind of
And they immediately
stupid.
canceled it.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I didn't end up doing the glucose test because I would fail. And this bitch's response was, what are you doing in this class then? I said, well, as I mentioned, I'm 30 weeks pregnant. And she said, if you have type 1 diabetes, which if I just told you I did, she was like, if you have type 1 diabetes, like you should just be controlling that with diet and like focusing on blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I don't control it with diet. I control it with like, yes, that
Insulin,
is
you
a component.
idiot.
But I was like, yeah, I take multiple daily injections. Like it's well controlled. And she was like, I just really don't know. Like, I don't want to waste your time. You're probably going to end up in a C-section. And I was like, I know that at this point, I was like getting hot. Like I could feel the blood just in my cheeks. And I was like, well, we're very prepared that that's a possibility. But at this point, like we're not scheduled for one. And, none of my doctors have mentioned that that's something we need to prepare for at this time. And she like launches into this whole thing about how like diabetics have big babies. And I just felt so on the spot. And of course, she had like made everyone be on video. So I'm just sitting there with her explaining to me all of the stereotypes that I had gone 30 weeks without facing. Like, I literally could have pulled out the book from Ginger and read any section where she talks about like you getting diabetes shamed. I'm surprised she didn't ask me. She like just shy of asked me, like, how much does your baby weigh? Which I was not going to tell her because they can do those projections from the
Which also they're
ultrasound.
not always right. My older sister, they projected my niece Amelia to weigh a lot more than she did. She came out being like 3 pounds less. So,
It's very much an estimate and based
yeah.
on measurements. Like part of the measurement is your baby's femur. So like if you have a tall baby, which to
Yeah.
be honest, I don't think Zach and I are destined for. I'm 5'3" on like a good day, but
But also,
case
if
in
you're
point, it was just like
smaller, like, it's all about how the baby takes up room in your body, right?
right.
Like, so
It's
it
it's
has to,
it's an estimate. It was not one that I was going to share her. Like attacking me is one thing, but my
yeah,
like mama bear instinct was coming out. I was like, I'm not sharing anything else, and I'm definitely not telling you anything else about my child. But it was just so uncomfortable that she was basically telling me, and I'm sitting there like looking at Zach, like we paid to be in
shamed.
this class. We paid to be in this class. I want this information. So even though she told us to be on video the whole time, after she was done shaming me and she had finally moved on to, the next couple, I just like took us off video and audio for a second. I was like, we only need to do this twice. This is a two-part class. She'll move on to like shaming the next person. Like, I am not going to be cheated out of this information that, again, I paid for because she doesn't think that I'm supposed to be here. And like, it just, it sat so uncomfortably. It was so weird to be on with the other couples then. Like,
How many
I felt
couples
I
were
felt like
there?
I didn't, not too many. I would say it was definitely less than a dozen.
That's still a lot to be called out like that in front of a group of people. Okay, here's my thing, and this has nothing to do with me, but this is my hot takeaway. What was this woman's credentials?
So she's an RN. I got the sense, I forget what her exact title was, but she spelt her name like a nincompoop, and it's a common name. I'm not going to say it, but it was a common name that just does not need to be spelled so dumbly.
And it wasn't Karen.
It was not. It was not Karen. Um,
Sorry to all the Karens out there, but you've been dealt a difficult card already. So,
I whatever her formal title is, she definitely teaches these classes a lot. So
right.
I
But my
understand like she's been in the biz of, babies popping out far longer than I have. Um, she did give us ultimately we were able to pull out some helpful information from the class. Like ultimately I am glad that we stayed, but to really be made to feel like in front of a group of people I shouldn't be there because my baby was probably going to be so large that I would have to deliver via C-section and I had no business even getting the information about a vaginal delivery. And I don't know, I guess because we had a scan this week and, we do know that baby girl is on the larger side of normal. She's not medically big, but like
and
on,
according
within the
to a
within the
scan,
normal range, she's currently measuring estimated on the larger side. I think it was just kind of in my brain, especially too. It's okay if we go to a C-section. I have no problem with that. But that's not where we're at now. And to be made to feel like I needed to justify that, like I was literally getting hit with every stereotype. And she was asking me just these dopey questions. She was like, "Has anyone like did anyone talk to you about your numbers like looking like you're at the end of pregnancy, like you're putting on weight? Like has anyone talked to you about how your blood sugar is going to change?" And I was like, "Oh my god, no. Thank God you're here. Thank God you made mention. I haven't been doing research for like over a year before we even tried to get pregnant. Like, of course I goddamn know that. Like, you think I made it 30 weeks doing absolutely no research? Like, I know that I'm taking it personally, but I'm hormonal, so I get to.
well, no, I think that there's so much more to this than that because even those of us that are not with child, or don't plan to be, or just aren't in this stage of life, uh, we come across things like this, and it's just so unfortunate that it's so dependent upon what it's Russian roulette with healthcare providers, no matter what aspects
That's
of
a good way of putting
of
it.
of life you're at, right? So like I have a story that I'm going to tell in another episode about my experience with COVID. In I had to go to the emergency room because of ketones and all these crazy things. But there are people that don't know. I literally had a nurse be like, my boyfriend was like, because I was kind of incapacitated because I was throwing up from keto, like I was basically like beginning of DKA situation. And the nurse was like, Matt was like, well, she's diabetic. And the nurse goes, what does that have to do with anything? And we both just looked at her and I was like, it's why I'm fucking here. Like, what do you mean? Sorry, language. But all of this is to say, you and I have both had diabetes for you're coming up on 10 years, right? And I'm coming up
I
on
was I
9.
was 10 years last year, and I was too pregnant and nauseous to properly celebrate.
Oh,
But let me just pick my jaw off the floor after hearing that, like, bit of your story, so I definitely
yeah,
wanna hear
that's
the
only
rest of
a
that.
tidbit of that story, but all
What
of
does
this is
that
to
have
say,
to do
and
with
I'm,
it?
I'm in New York in an emergency room. Like, you'd hope that people, just like you'd hope that this person that is in a position of not only coming face to face virtually with people, you know, consumer facing, I would say, position, who is a nurse. So that's already something that we're hoping that, we know not everyone can know everything about everything, right? But if you're in the position where you're going to be interacting with, you know, pregnant people, and statistically speaking, a portion of those are going to be high risk in one way or another, unless you're hyper specialized in diabetic pregnancies, like, keep that to yourself. Someone has signed up for your class, you're there to give them a service. If they want to aside with you at another time, that's a different story. But to make anyone feel like they're less than or that they're doing something wrong when they actually don't know your specifics of your situation is unacceptable to me. And I think that it creates more misinformation, because then it puts you in a position where you're like, well, I don't want the rest of these couples to think that, like, that this is right. And I certainly don't want this woman going telling other people, type 1 pregnant people in other
That was
classes
my
that that's
concern. I was like, "I don't wanna sit here and have to justify my place in this class," and definitely, like,
right.
at
And
least
it's
thank
not your
goodness it was
job.
on a morning that I was having a really good blood sugar morning, but like I mentioned, the 3rd trimester is just such a different animal that I think I actually would have cried if it had been earlier that week because I've had to make such adjustments.
Well, you're also
Um,
grow you're a pregnant person. Like, she should know that a pregnant
she wasn't
person is
treating me she was not
stressed.
treating me like a pregnant woman, she was treating me like a type 1 diabetic who made a mistake.
Yeah, and that's unacceptable. So I think, that obviously this is, like, unfortunately something that definitely occurs a good chunk of the time, considering that we've both had situations that, different states, different situations, but, like, people still don't know a lot about chronic illnesses, and they don't know a lot about diabetes, and it puts us in this unfortunate position where we feel like we're going to have to explain things to change things for others. And I know it's different for us because, we have a podcast, we're pretty open about it, but that doesn't mean that we want to spend our precious time, our precious energy explaining ourselves to people that clearly don't take the time to learn. It's one thing if they're willing to listen to what you have to say, it's another if they're going to put you on the spot and shame you in front of people, and that's just
And
unacceptable.
if she really had a concern, again, it's less than a dozen couples. You have my contact information. You sent me the Zoom. If you were really concerned, you could have sent me an email and just said, like, hey, like, I'm just checking in. You mentioned you're a type 1 diabetic. Like, have your doctors been in touch with you about the possibility of a cesarean delivery? Like, I just want to make sure, you're clear on whatever options are available. That would
Yeah.
have been so much nicer. Then you're probably going to have to do this because your baby's probably going to be huge.
Also, if she was really
Leaving
concerned
me,
about people's time, she wouldn't have spent all of everyone else's time, talking about one specific patient in front of
right,
everyone. So
right.
that's BS. Unfortunately,
But but it does amaze me. This is the first time I've personally faced it, but there were instances that Ginger mentioned, and then at the end of that book, the pregnancy with type 1 diabetes, there's just like a sampling of anecdotes from other type 1 diabetic mothers um, during their pregnancies. It is amazing what people think you don't know, especially as you get further along into the pregnancy, because not all pregnancies are planned. Like ours was definitely planned. Again, I had done research and practice. Like by the time I took my pregnancy test, I was like, I'm in the best place I could possibly be to do this. Not everyone has that. Some people get pregnant in just whatever unplanned situation and go on to have completely healthy pregnancies, but they do need to pick up the research faster. Simply
it's
because
just a matter of,
by the time you get the positive
right.
test, you need to catch yourself up a little bit. It happens, and there's so much information out there. Like if I can attest to anything, it's how much information there is out there. So I understand the question, especially early on in pregnancy, like, do you know about this? Have you talked to your doctor about this? But by the time we're at 30 weeks, I think it's probably safe to say that me and my doctors have touched on what kind of
Everything.
delivery I'm having at the very least.
I mean, you're gonna have a baby in more or less 10 weeks, you know? So it's
Oh god.
it's crunch time.
That keeps hitting me.
It's
But
crunch time, you know?
I feel good, I feel strong, I feel healthy. What I just didn't like about the way that she also said the words, like, "You're probably gonna have a cesarean delivery." I'm sorry, like, is my delivery any less than if that is the case? Like, I'm here to get this information because I want it, but I don't want, like, that tone being associated. What if I do end up needing a C-section? I don't want that tone being associated with
There's
it. And
nothing wrong with a
how
C-section.
dare you be a delivery nurse
So
educator, and
exactly.
that's how you use the phrase C-section as if it's some kind of failure or, like,
Punishment.
less.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I can't imagine being a woman who's pregnant and has type 1 diabetes. I mean, I hope to imagine it someday, but it's two highly, or three, I would even say, highly stigmatized things, right? So, like, being a woman is hard enough. Everyone's always telling you how you feel when you go to the doctor, how to do this, how to do that, at least in my experience. Being pregnant, everyone has an opinion about your body, what you're doing, all these things. And having diabetes, everyone has pregnant. Everyone has an opinion on that. And it's like you fold those three things together, and it's just wild to me that people think that everything that they're thinking hasn't already gone through your mind. It's insane to me. Um,
I think the only other, like, off the wall comment I got, and I can't say who it was, but the only other off the hand comment I got was when we were doing our announcements, and we waited until we got our 12-week scan and made sure that everything looked like all kosher at the end of the first trimester before we announced to anyone other than, like, very immediate family. Um, someone just asked me point blank, like I said, I'm pregnant, and they said, "Oh, well, with the type 1 diabetes, is that safe?" And I was like, "Oh, you know what? No, you're right."
yeah, no. The thing is, it's hard for me too because that's not the way I wanted to say that. I think that there's just so much, especially depending on the generation of the person asking you. There's just so much that people don't know. My own parents love them endlessly, but they're like, after listening to how difficult it is, like how much work goes into it, like that seems like a lot of work. And, like that's a lot. And I'm like, yeah, it does, which is why I'm being very thoughtful in my my family planning. Like, I don't think anyone takes having a child lightly at any stage in their life. And I think that those with chronic illnesses and have all the more work to put into it, it's just an extra level of making sure it's something you really want. And that can also be beautiful. Like, look at how much harder I worked to have this kid, like, look at all these extra things that I did. Um,
And it is all
so,
relative because when you think about it, like, take pregnancy out of it, just look at type 1 diabetes. If you were to describe what you have to do in a day to anyone, think about how impossible that sounds.
oh, yeah.
Like,
My favorite is when people are like,
regardless
I
of
don't know how
what,
you do it. And I'm like,
yeah, regardless of what your high range alert is set to on your CGM, your low range, regardless of what your targets are during the day, you are working 10 times harder for every meal and thinking about it 10 times more. Pregnancy escalates that, but it's something you're already doing, which I hope is just a comfort to anyone who's considering pregnancy. Like, it sounds like such a bear and the targets sound so impossible, but you're hitting your targets now probably more often than not. Like, it really is just a shift of changing what's the goal. Like, by shifting your goal, you would just be amazed how much you can really shift all of your numbers just, like, down that much more. But, like, you're already doing the impossible by keeping yourself alive with synthetic insulin. Like, you're already doing the work.
100
You're
years ago,
just
this wasn't a thing, like,
right.
that's something to
You're
keep in
you're
mind.
you're wearing something that tells you what your blood sugar is, and then you do mental calculations to determine how much to take for a meal. Like, I don't want to say like, oh, it's no different in pregnancy, because it is, because your goals are different, but like the process is the same, and it's already a pretty seemingly impossible process to keep your numbers under whatever and keeping them above whatever whatever your goal range is. So
Christy, I think that is a positive note to end this episode on. And I look forward to continuing this conversation when you are closer to the end of this third trimester, which isn't
I
that far
know
off.
I'm getting so excited. I cannot wait to have her here. I will say we have her name picked out,
Ooh,
and it is
mazel,
up in the.
mazel.
I'm sitting in the nursery right now. I don't know if
I
you
know
noticed. I'm
Christy
sitting in
has
my
been
rocker.
rocking this entire time, and I'm gonna throw up. I love you very much, but I
I'm
just I'm gonna
sorry.
throw up.
I'm
Sorry,
so sorry.
Paxlovid makes you pretty nauseous. I'm over
Oh
here
my
like
god, I'm such a trash person. I'm
no,
like
it's
sitting here
okay.
like
I
this
just
is
haven't
great.
been looking at the camera.
All right, so
Okay.
I'm trash. Let's end
No,
this.
you are not at all. I didn't say anything. You're
I'll
fine. That's
stop
on me.
moving.
No, I just need to learn to
I'm
I mean,
so
I don't need to
sorry.
learn to speak up. All I do is speak up. I just didn't, it's fine. I just wasn't looking. Um, she's glowing though, ladies and gents. Uh, Anywho, Christy, as always, love to hear your voice. Love to hear your story. Hate that this happened, and you know, here for you always.
Yeah,
So
we dislike that lady, but
yeah, thumbs down to
there's
her.
still like there's so much. I do want to eventually get on here with Miriam too, because I feel like we could just like bounce back and forth with like, oh, this and this and this. Um, there's so much more to say about pregnancy with type 1, but like again, just to end on a positive note, like I would do this happily all over again. I've had such a positive experience. It's not to say that every
Knock on
blood
wood.
sugar, not like every, yeah, knock on wood, very positive experience so far. It sounds scarier than it is. Like I'm literally smiling because of how much fun I've had this whole journey. So I'm excited to talk about it more.
Ugh, love it. Okay, so guys, this is my spiel, my little wrap up. Follow us on Instagram at pancreas_pals. Follow us on Facebook at pancreaspalspp. Email us at pancreaspals123@gmail.com. Slide into our DMs or emails. We love hearing from you guys. We're just kind of doing seasons as they come now. Wow, that was like more existential than I was expecting. But that basically means that we're going week by week, and I'm so excited for all the upcoming episodes and to finally have Bebe Girl here. Again, that is not my child, that is Christy's child. I just feel like with with audio, you never know who's the pregnant one. I'm like, it's not me. Um, Thank you guys so much for listening, and Christy, thanks for taking some time out of your day to regale us.
Anytime.
All right, guys, have a great week.
Bye.
Today's episode was brought to you by US Med Supply. Thanks for listening. Hey, Christy, have you heard of US Med Supply?
I think I've seen a commercial for it. It's a medical supply company, right?
Yeah, but apparently they're the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide, the #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod Dash, and the #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide. Plus, they're rated as the #1 distributor in Dexcom customer satisfaction surveys.
Ooh, sounds like something I need to check out. Do they partner with most insurance companies?
Yep, and they'll even help us get set up and work with our insurance companies so we don't have to spend hours on the phone.
The actual dream.
Right? We and all of our pals can head to usmed.com/pals or call 888-721-1516 to sign up now.
Already on their website.